Hello, I'm Praneshwar and I'll be talking to you about the types of errors in Java. So before we go into the actual programming aspect, the actual Java aspect, let's talk about what errors are in real life. Errors are, they're mistakes in some form. Let me give you a real life scenario. You want to buy a new car and you go to a car store. There are three cars that you see. On the first car that you see, the window is cracked. The glass on the window, the glass pane is broken, and we don't want that, right? We don't want such a car. But this kind of error, you've seen it. You've seen the car on the exterior itself, the window's cracked, and we don't want that kind of car. So we go to the next one. Now in this one, the window looks perfect. There's no damage or of any sort on the car itself on the exterior. Inside you go, and there's the indicator button, right? So you want to see if the indicator lights are working. You press the indicator button. Instead of the indicator lights going on, the horn goes on. You hear the horn sound, and we don't want that when we are driving. Let's say you're driving on a highway and then you want to switch lanes. You obviously want to press the indicator button, right? But then instead of the indicator lights going on, if the horn goes on, obviously you won't want such a car. So you go to the next one. The next one looks perfect on the outside, no damaged window, no damaged panes, nothing. And inside you go, the indicator lights, the button is working, the indicator lights go on when you're pressing the indicator button, the horn goes on when you're pressing the horn button, so everything looks perfect, right? But then you take it for a drive, and let's say you've gone 250 meters or so, and the wheel detaches from the car. Obviously you won't want such a car where the wheel detaches off when you are driving the car, right? But this kind of error, when you saw it, you never, you could, obviously the car looked in perfect condition, it was really good. But then while driving, the wheel detached off. Maybe you hit a stone, something like that. Now we go to the actual programming aspect. So in Java, there are three types of errors, starting with the compilation error, right? So this can be compared to the broken window, all right? And then there is the logical error, which can be compared to the horn going on while pressing the indicator button. And then there's a runtime error, which can be compared to the wheel detaching while you're driving the car. So now let's look at compilation error. First, let's talk about Java as a compiled language. What does that mean? Java is obviously a compiled language, which means that when you have your source code, so what is source code is the line of Java code that you've written. Let's see system.out.println hello world, right? So that's a line of Java code. So what Java does is that it has a compiler, Java C, which converts this line of code into machine code. What is machine code? It is the code that is understandable by the computer that you're working on, and this machine code is executed by the computer. So you write a source code which is converted into machine code by Java C, which is executed by the computer, right? So what does this mean? This means that the whole code, the whole section of code that you've written is collectively converted into machine code, which means that the compiler can easily find out errors if there are any in the code at the time when this code is being compiled in the sense compiled into machine code, right? So that's how compilation errors pop up when you're programming. There are two types of compilation errors. There's a syntax error and there's a semantic error. Now, what is a syntax error? What is syntax, first of all? Syntax is the structure, the format that a code is supposed to be written in. And this error happens when the structure or the format of the code is wrong. In the sense, let's look at a few examples as we can see here. The semicolon is missing in Java. You need a semicolon after everything, right? Or after almost everything. And then the keywords are misspelled or typed in uppercase. Let's say class or public static void main. Public static void main, void. Any of those keywords, they are they're misspelled. Because all of them are supposed to be in lowercase. Now let's take an example in the English language, right? If I want to start a sentence, I have to do it with a uppercase letter, like let's say a fox, and then you put a full stop, and then I want to write a rabbit. So the A should be in uppercase, right? Otherwise, it's an error, grammatical error, as we say it. And then the curly braces or parentheses is missing in Java. As you know, curly braces are supposed to come after if or anywhere or functions anywhere where you're encapsulating a piece of code into a higher level function, right? Anything like that. And And parentheses, we obviously know where they come. So if they're not closed, in the sense I'm writing system.out.println and I have an open bracket, I write something, I don't close it and then I add a semicolon, that's obviously a syntax error. So all of these errors actually, they're identified by the IDE, the integrated development environment where you are working, right? Like what do I mean? Say if you're using BlueJ, IntelliJ, Oracle, Oracle's Eclipse, or anything like that, when you're writing the code itself, the IDE can find out that you've made a mistake over there and it shows it right over there. Then we come to semantic errors. Now, what is semantic? Semantic deals with the more logical aspect of the syntax. So, what do I mean by that? Let's look at a few examples. As you can see here, using the increment or decrement operator with a Boolean variable. Let's say I say Boolean A is equal to true. I can't write A plus plus. I mean, Boolean just has true or false, two values. You can't increment true to be true plus one or anything like that. And declaring a variable twice using the same data type. Something like int, as you can see here, there's an example, int x and then float x. That's obviously not possible because x is a variable, it's the identifier of this variable, and a variable can only be of one data type, if you remember, in Java. So you can't have one variable with two data types or change the data type while in the middle of the code. And then type incompatibility, obviously int b is equal to good, so int is integer, good is a string. You can't store a string in an integer variable using a non-initialized variable in the program. Example, int x is equal to x plus 2. Here we write x is equal to x plus 2. So where does this x come from? I mean, it has not been initialized in the sense x is equal to x plus 2. So x is equal to, that's fine till there, but there's an x plus 2. What is the value of this x? It's obviously undefined. I mean, there's nothing, it's not defined by the programmer. So it'll obviously show a semantic error. Next, we come to logical errors. Now, logical errors are a bit more complicated than compile time errors. Now, what do I mean by that? Let's say I'm a man, right? And I say I'm a cow. Is that true? I mean, it's grammatically correct. I is uppercase. I'm a cow. It also ends with a full stop. So that is not grammatically correct according to the English language. But I'm a man. I can't say I'm a cow, right? The same way in Java, when the code is perfect, right? There's nothing wrong with the code with respect to compilation. That's when logical error, but yet you don't get the desired output. That's when logical errors come in. So to give an example, the user types something, and what your program does is to add a full stop after that something and display it to the user, right? So how should this be? How should this be programmed? Let's say this line, string a is equal to sc.next. So sc is the scanner that I have already defined before but not shown here. And I say system.out.print a, which is the input by the user, plus a question mark. Now, is this correct? Is this logically correct? Because what I want to do, or what I'm instructed to do, is to add a full stop after what the user types. But here what I'm doing is, when the user types their string, I'm adding a question mark, and I don't want that. But the code is perfect. There's nothing wrong with this code. These are what logical errors are. Logical errors are such errors where the code is perfect, but you still don't get the desired output that you want. Right. Next, we come to runtime errors. Now, runtime errors, they are a fault of both the user and the programmer. Not both, either the user or the programmer. So, as we know, Java comes with the JRE, which is a runtime environment. Okay, now let's come to the runtime error. So, int a is equal to sc.nextInt. Is there anything wrong? Is there anything wrong with, is there a compilation error over here? No, because int a, alright, it's an integer, sc.nextInt. So, we're using the next int. So, it should accept an int. So, everything is going on perfectly, right? So, sc is already defined, alright, don't get me on that. Sc scanner, sc is equal to new scanner system. I inputted java to tutil.sc scanner, right? But when the code is running, the user inputs hello, how are you? What is that? That's a string, and that can't be stored in an integer, right? So during the runtime, when the user enters, let's say some other data type, instead of what we are accepting, an exception will be thrown, and this exception is the input mismatch exception. So this is a runtime error, but there can be a fault of the programmer as well, in the sense int a is equal to new int 5. So this is basically an array which can only have not only have, but has 5 values. It stores 5 values: 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? That's the index numbers that I'm mentioning, or the values, because I've not defined any value yet. So let's just say I've defined some value for each index position, and then I just system.out.println a in the position of 5. That can't be possible. I mean, 4 is the last index position. That's the fifth value in this array, and then I'm looking for 5, index position 5. It will be the 6 values there. There's no it doesn't even have 6 values, this array. So another exception will be thrown, which is array index out of bounds exception. So these are the errors that we were looking at. There are 3 types of errors. Just to have a quick recap: there's the compilation error caught by the compiler, and then there's the logical error, which is not caught by the compiler. It is perfectly all the code is perfectly correct. There's nothing wrong with the code, but it's the programmer's fault. So they must find the errors, right? And then there's a runtime error, which is the error that happens during the runtime. As I said, like when you're driving the car, everything is perfect, everything looks perfect, but suddenly maybe you hit a large rock or something, and then the wheel gets detached, right? So that kind of errors are runtime errors, right? So that was it for the types of errors in Java. It was my pleasure teaching you all.